Hello, my name is Violette and welcome to my little corner of booktube here on Violette's Book Days. Now, I know I'm a bit late to the party for the wrap-up of my reading for Victober and the spooky season reads, but at least I got there in the end. So I only finished my last book for the month at nearly midnight on Halloween. So I just scraped in, but that's me. Sometimes I'm in early with things and sometimes I'm late. And also now that I'm back at work and I don't have the school holidays to indulge in my hobbies in, it's made it just that much harder for me. So I guess I'm going to have to work on scheduling my filming, especially for Poetry Thursday. So then I can fit more in. Now, on to the main part of the video. So this month, or rather last month in October, I read Silas Marner by George Eliot. I read The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. Then Bellman and Black by Dianne Setterfield, and a play called A Doll's House by Henrik Ibson. And also 4 short stories from a collection called Night Terrors by E.F. Benson. So out of all those, my 2 favourite reads were Silas Marner and Bellman and Black. So I think I'll start and end this wrap up with those 2, so the 2 favourites. But actually the way I've planned my reads are in this order. So it's basically the order that I read them in. So onto my first book. So yes, Silas Marner. This is definitely one I'm going to be remembering fondly. Of course, George Eliot's writing is just wonderful, and it really pulled me into this place alongside Silas. I'll try and give a brief outline without any spoilers, at least not more than the blurb stated here, or I think it was actually a bit misleading. So anyway, in the beginning, Silas is a happy enough young man whose trade is weaving linen cloth, and he lives in a Calvinist community in a place called Lantern Yard. Unfortunately, everything changes for Silas when he's betrayed by his best friend and unjustly accused of theft. So from then on, his whole outlook on life changes, and he leaves his home to go and live in a completely different place where nobody knows him, called, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Ravilo. Anyway, it's a small village, and there he lives in a small cottage, and he continues his work as a linen weaver. Now, his work is very sought after, and he makes a fair bit of money. This is now what reminds me of Scrooge, or even more of the character Smeagol that turns into Gollum through his obsession with the ring from The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. So anyway, as Silas hoards his money, and it seems that his only happiness in the world is to count and lovingly hold his coins every night, I'd like to read a few lines from where Eliot describes how Silas interacts with his money. So let me see. Did put a marker in. So okay, goes like this. This is just page 33, so pretty early on. He began to think it was conscious of him, as his loom was. He means his money is conscious of him, like it's a living, breathing being. And he would on no account have exchanged those coins, which have become his familiars, for other coins with unknown faces. He handled them, he counted them, till their form and colour were like the satisfaction of a thirst to him. But it was only in the night, when his work was done, and he drew them out to enjoy their companionship. So he's completely obsessed with his money, but he doesn't have anything to do with the other people in the village. He doesn't socialise. The only contact he has with the people of Raveloe is to get his work, to get orders in, to deliver the orders, and to buy food. So he's completely lost faith in people and feels he can't trust anyone. So the people in the village already thinks he looks a bit odd, and he's also short-sighted, so he kind of has to, like, I guess, squint to see people properly. But he does behave oddly to them. He is different, comes from a different background. He's from the outsides. So outsiders would always have a harder time fitting in. So especially in the time when most people stayed within their community, or they didn't stray very far. Maybe to the village over, or the one over the hill, the next one over the hill. So something else, which I forgot to mention earlier, is that Eliot changes throughout the book how her main character is referred to. So it alternates between his first name, Silas, and his last name, Marner. So I don't know why, but I did think it was unusual. I'm not sure the purpose of it. But anyway, back to Silas and what goes on with him. So after 15 years of hard work, something happens that leaves him devastated for a second time in his life. So now the interesting thing is that we know who stole his money, the reader knows, but neither he nor the villagers know. So we're in on the secret, but that's as much as I'll say about it, so I don't spoil it for you. And now Silas, in his panic, actually starts to speak to the other villagers, and he asks for their help. So there's also this second plot that runs through the story, and it does intertwine with what happens with Silas. So in two ways actually with Silas, and of course it involves the other characters too. They're not fully fleshed out. You sort of get a little taste of them, but the main character that we're really in with is Silas. So now what did have me frustrated from about halfway through the book is that I was wondering when on earth the main part of the story would start. So the one where the little girl enters Silas's life, and then the change that she would bring about for him, or rather that he experiences with her. So when it finally happened, their first meeting, it really was very magical. It was really touching, and I think I actually reread the passage twice at the time because it was like, oh, finally it's there. And then further along, then the help that he gets from his neighbours is really sweet to see. And throughout this time, when he's got this little girl, and he begins to open up more about his own life with another character. She's called Dolly, but we only get to see a small fraction of the time the girl is young, because it then kind of jumps straight into when she is a young woman or a young teenager. So I don't think I'll say any more. Just you'll have to read the book for yourself. It really is worth it, especially with the ending. And it's also one of George Eliot's shortest works. I think it was her third work. But anyway, it's short. Maybe that'll persuade you. If you've never read any of her books before, maybe you could start with Silas Marner. Oh, and also I just found on YouTube there's a really old movie. It is still in colour, so not that old. But there's an old movie for Silas Marner, so I have yet to watch it. Maybe you can check it out if you're interested. And then I can actually compare it with the book too. Now, on to The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. So this is a super short book. Let me see, it comes in at 82 pages in this edition anyway, but still very short. So I thought the book was fascinating. It explores the dark side of human nature and the danger of suppressing one's own flaws, It's about the good in us and also the evil lurking sort of in the darkest corners of our souls. Maybe not everyone, but who knows? So it's the question of which has control. Is there a push and pull between the two? But anyway, I just want to say that this classic is worth your while to read. The writing was excellent, and I also thought I'd read you a short descriptive passage from here where he wrote of the famous London fog that I really enjoyed. So this is on page 28. Oh goodness, my book's already falling apart. Look at that. Okay. The fog still slept on the wing above the drowned city, where the lamps glimmered like carbuncles. And through the muffle and smother of these fallen clouds, the procession of the town's life was still rolling in through the great arteries with a sound as of a mighty wind. Okay. I really like that. There's a lot to unpack with this, but if you don't know anything about the story, don't go reading too much about it, just get into it. Okay. Next one was Henrik Ibsen's play A Doll's House. So I know I read a part or all of this play when I was studying theatre studies at uni. That was part of the major I chose when I was doing my Bachelor of Education. Anyway, I honestly didn't remember much about it, but I knew it was a significant play that began to sort of move theatre in a new direction. I didn't really like the play at all. Mainly, I couldn't connect with the characters. I just didn't like them. But before I start going into the storyline, I thought I'd tell you, at least that the playwright, Henrik Ibsen, was from Norway, and that A Doll's House, it premiered at the Royal Danish Theatre in Copenhagen on the 21st of December. So Copenhagen in Denmark, so it wasn't in Norway where it premiered. 21st of December in 1879. So it seems Ibsen pretty much went into self-imposed exile, mainly because his plays weren't doing well in Norway, so he couldn't make any money. So he lived in Denmark, in Germany, and in Italy. Now, back to the play. So the characters of Nora and Torvald Helmer in the play, they're defined by the really rigid gender roles of the 19th century. In the societies of Europe, in which they really showcase in all its glory, but no, just kidding, in all its ugliness. And yeah, the gender roles, but then goes to kind of shatter them, or at least it's reverberates throughout the theatre, the sound of a certain something, which I'll tell you at the end. But also the characters, their character traits, they reveal a massive imbalance in their own marriage. So Torvald, he's vain, obsessed with social status, respectability, and he believes that being in control within his home is his right. It gets worse though. He is also patronising and condescending, and he treats Nora like a child or a pet. He sees himself as her intellectual and moral superior. So he's constantly instructing and correcting her. It's just really infuriating. So anyway, of course, he's a traditional male of his time, and he really fully embraced the role of being the dominant, sort of protective, coddling, all-knowing male provider. So wholly believing a woman's place is to be sheltered and dependent. And I would go so far as to say he sees Nora as his property, as probably did many men back then. Obviously not all. But basically the crux of the story is that Nora saved her husband's life by taking out a loan so they could go to a warmer climate for a while, so he could get better. He was on the doctor's orders, basically. If he doesn't get somewhere warmer, he's likely going to die. So the problem is that Torvald is completely against being in debt. Ironic, as he works in the banking system. And so his wife Nora keeps this loan a secret, making out as if her father had given her the money. In reality, she had forged his signature, mainly because he was also unwell and she didn't want to trouble him. But I think she really just also wanted to be in control for once, to have a taste of the freedom that money can bring when one needs it. Unfortunately, she is still paying off the loan and knows that it would devastate her marriage should her husband find out. I seriously found this so maddening. Not only that women couldn't get loans on their own, only with a male, but that the fact that her generous act of saving Torvald's life should be turned on its head as if she's done an evil thing is crazy. Yeah, I nearly didn't finish reading the play because I found it just totally repugnant, the whole idea of that. Anyway, there are other characters involved, which I won't go into, but they do play a significant part in how the play develops and the decision Nora eventually takes. So the play ends with a loudly slammed door, which is, if you know anything about theatre, yeah, that's a well-known part, even if you don't know the rest of the play. So back in the day, the play was described as scandalous by many critics and audiences. But I'm sure many women would have been secretly glad that some men's hypocrisies have been highlighted. So one such woman, a little bit of research after reading the play. So her name was Eleanor Marx. She was a socialist feminist and also translated the play. And she wrote that women are the creatures of an organised tyranny of men, as the workers are the creatures of an organised tyranny of idlers. So I really like that quote. Looks like she was an interesting character. Might look more into her. So I would only recommend you read this play if you want to have read a major work of early realism in the theatre, because it had a big impact on the scene. No pun intended. I will read some of Ibsen's other plays, I think, and hopefully I'll enjoy them a bit more. Honestly, the characters in this one had me close to throwing the book across the room, or at least just DNFing it. Okay, so now to the short stories I read by E.F. Benson. So the stories I read were The Room in the Tower, The Dust Cloud, Mrs. Amworth. Actually, I chose Mrs. Amworth because a commenter had mentioned how much they liked that one, so I had a look at that one. It involves vampires. It was pretty good too. And the last one was How Fear Departed from the Long Gallery. And that one was recommended by Steve Donahue. So my favourite of these was The Long Gallery one. It's, I just like that, the whole concept of it. But for his other stories, he didn't shy away from the graphic details. So the book, The Room in the Tower, is filled with gory details, especially blood. But somehow it's been written in, that older Victorian style, I'm fine with it. I'm usually, not into horror and gore and that sort of thing. I like a bit of mystery, a bit of spookiness, and sort of that sort of atmosphere, but not full on like murder and gore and stuff. But it was okay in this. Yeah, so it's tame compared to what's been written since. Although these are supposed to be ghost stories anyway, so not horror stories. I loved how the Long Gallery story ended, and I did kind of guess a little part of it, or how it would end, but not exactly then the consequences of it. But it was still a very satisfactory read. So I'll still read the other stories, but spread out kind of slowly. I don't know how long. There are a lot. But I do enjoy Benson's style. And I also found out that he wrote many other stories. I think over 100 books, actually. And his most famous ones, which I really would love to get a hold of, it's a series of satirical novels called Lucia, which were also made into a TV series at some stage. So if I can find a copy of one of them, preferably, well, the first one, I'd love to try it. So let me know if you've read any of them, or any of Benson's ghost stories, and what you thought of them. I would actually like to know. So I also did read the introduction. There's a very short introduction in the book that speaks a bit about Benson's family, his background, and it sounds like there was a bit of a family violence aspect to it, or dominance perhaps as well. I'm not sure of the actual violence part, but definitely dominance from the father. But despite this, the parents, so both of them, they really promoted intellectual rigor and freedom. So that out of the 6 siblings, 4 of them, the 3 brothers, they all became successfully published authors. And the sister became a well-respected Egyptologist. And she was also one of the first women to be admitted to Oxford. But later, at some stage, she became mentally disturbed, though I'm not sure if that was a lifelong condition or if that came on suddenly. And she attacked her mother with the intention of killing her. But that's according to one of her brother's accounts in a letter. And she was subsequently kept under restraint. So what have that actually meant? I don't know. But I think she does sound like a fascinating woman. So that's another one that I'd be interested in finding out more about. Now, finally, on to the last book for October. For me, that is Dianne Setterfield's Bellman and Black. Now, I really enjoyed this one for its unusual storyline and the themes of work, or rather overwork, with the birds involved, with a focus on the rooks, theme of death, and how a mill operated, and not just a mill, that later it's the Morning Emporium as well. But on here it says that it's a ghost story, but I think that's really misleading. I kept wondering when the ghost was going to appear or be mentioned, and it never was. So that's not a spoiler, I'm just letting you know, if you want to read this book, there is no actual ghost. Instead, the ghost is more of a metaphor, not an actual manifestation of a ghost. So the blurb on the book is also misleading. It made me think it was set mostly at the Morning Emporium for the bereaved, called Bellman and Black. That's the name of the business. But this was only from about halfway through the book. The first half of the book begins with a brief introduction to the main character. So William Bellman as a boy and a youth, and the far-reaching impact his act of killing a rook with a freakishly long-distance shot from his catapult with a perfectly formed stone, the effect that will have on his life and how it reverberates on down through the years. And the sad factor is he didn't actually really want to kill the rook. He was thinking about possibly making noise to scare it off, but he still didn't really think the rook would actually kill the rook, or let alone land anywhere near it, because it was way across the field and it was perched on a tree. Basically, he was showing off with his friends. The book does have a supernatural feel to it, and I really like the atmosphere. I really like the writing. But I think it also focused a bit too much on how a business is run. So specifically a mill that produces fine cloths of many colours. And only later does the action take place in the city, in the Morning Emporium. But because I really loved the writing, there was just something about it that kind of kept me kept me going and drew me in, despite my growing annoyance with William. So how perfect and intelligent he was. He could figure everything out. Everything was always just going so well for him. And really the over-focus on every aspect of his businesses. It was a little bit overdone, I think. But yeah, so his character's really well drawn out. But I did want to delve more into other characters' lives, not just his. So we get a taste of them, but nothing anywhere near enough, I think. So William's character arc is fulfilled in the end. Not like how I thought it might be, but in a way, I guess it sort of did end well, or rather it ended how it needed to end. So I liked her writing, that I did seek out another of her books. She's only written 3 so far. So her first book was called The 13th Tale. And that's what I have here. So it's about an abandoned house with parallel stories. So a family secret that slowly gets unraveled. That is highly linked with this house. It sounds like a fantastic, atmospheric kind of spooky read. Oh, by the way, Bellman and Black was her second book. And her third book is Once Upon a Secret River, which I do actually have an audiobook version of, but I haven't started it yet. But I think I'll get to it after this one. So that's it for my October and Spooky Reads wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it and that I didn't ramble on for too long. Although, seriously, having some detailed notes has really helped me this time. I hope you'll come back and join me in another time. Bye for now.